Hi, I'm Lisa Leiter. In Chicago Business Today, Daley by the numbers. As Mayor Richard Daley prepares a likely bid for an unprecedented seventh term, Crain's decided to undertake the most quantitative assessment ever done on his two-decade tenure running the city. What it found? Mayor Daley has made Chicago desirable and safe for the upper middle class and for corporate America. A survey commissioned by Crain's finds that business people hold Mayor Daley and his policies in high regard. But the months-long examination also found that the total number of jobs in the city has dropped, debt has ballooned, and some parts of the city have been left behind. Earlier, I sat down with Crain's columnist Greg Hinz, who co-authored the story in this week's print edition of Crain's. Greg, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
So statistically speaking, what would you say is the greatest accomplishment of the Daley administration?
He's repositioned the central core of the city as a vital business district that has world-class appeal, and all that he's spun off all neighborhoods and shops and bars and shopping districts and whatever that make Chicago competitive to certain kinds of folks.
We've actually had a return of late of some corporate headquarters when the issue was 10 years ago that they were all leaving.
Yeah, I mean, corporations these days go where the talent is rather than the other way around. And to the extent that you have people living in your town because they like it there, that's a really important recruitment tool.
What did this survey say that Crain's commissioned? What was the general gist of that?
Business people, by and large, are pretty happy in Chicago, even happier than they are with Daley, although they're happy with him too. If they have a real bone to pick with him in general, it didn't come out.
What would you say would be his biggest failure?
Two, this new wealth that's been created, it hasn't really been spread. It's very highly concentrated. You can't blame him for all that. Chicago, to some degree, hasn't done a very good job of spreading the wealth, which is why the number of jobs in the city, despite what you see downtown overall, has continued to go down over the past 20 years. The other problem is debt. To make the city attractive as a global center and build the Millennium Parks and Theater Rows and meeting planners, whatever, costs a lot of money. We've borrowed a lot of it. So our debt is way up, as well as the unfunded pension liability we have for city workers.
And what are people saying is a solution to this ballooning debt and these unfunded liabilities? How are we going to deal with that going forward?
Well, if you had a good answer, you could be mayor. His solution has been to, little by little, kind of sell off the family jewels. We sold off the parking meters, real controversial deal. The Skyway, less controversial. Pending is long-term lease for Midway Airport. Yes, those things get us some money that we can use to pay for things, but in government finance, you don't want to use one-time revenues to pay operating expenses, and we're starting to do that.
And you talked about some of the neighborhoods that have thrived the most during his tenure. What's the main reason why they have seen such a dramatic increase versus those neighborhoods that really have been left behind?
Because they're close to the loop and it's jobs. These are neighborhoods, they're quick commute, they have cultural amenities, they look pretty, they're exciting to folks just out of college, and at the other end, empty nesters whose kids have gone. These are really desirable kinds of things.
One of the most stunning numbers, I thought, was the number of jobs that have been lost over that longer period of time. How significant of an issue will it be going forward?
Illinois no longer and Chicago no longer are really creating mass numbers of good jobs. The city's done better than the state, but there's a whole category of folks that are being left behind.
In summary, then, what would you say was the most stunning thing that you found in looking at the numbers?
How Chicago has split. There's a part of the city that's hooked into an international economy that services big companies, does real well, but then there's everybody else, and everybody else is where the problem is.
Okay, well, Greg, thanks for joining us today. We appreciate it.
You're welcome.
It's worth noting that Mayor Daley declined to be interviewed by Crain's for this story. And that's this edition of Chicago Business Today. For more on this story, be sure to check out this week's print edition of Crain's or chicagobusiness.com. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.